The stones we swallow young enough become part of our skeleton, and we learn to stand up straight anyway. Man, let that just sink in for a second, right? Are you hooked? Because I know I absolutely was. This incredibly haunting line sets a deeply psychological, almost heavy tone for our explainer today. We're going to dive straight into the permanent, unyielding weight of childhood trauma, and really the hidden costs of family loyalty.
All right, so let's get right into it. Welcome to today's explainer. We're looking at a really fascinating piece of source material from RelayWriters.com, and it's titled Exactly as All Right as We Can Manage. Together, you and I are going to basically dissect the anatomy of an impossible choice. We're exploring how family secrets are kept, the massive unspoken burdens placed on kids, and the sheer chilling pragmatism of survival. So I want you to keep the number 8 in mind. Before we get lost in this heavy narrative, you have to know this wild fact about how this text came to be. This compelling, totally singular story, it wasn't written by one author sitting alone in a room somewhere. Nope. It was actually written by 8 complete strangers. Literally 8 people who've never even met each other. To wrap our heads around how that even works, we need to talk about the format. It's called a relay. Think of it like a giant creative relay race. It's a collaborative story built sequentially. So one writer pens a chapter, and then they leave behind just one final line. The next stranger picks it up from there, and so on. It is such an incredible creative experiment. And what makes Exactly as All Right as We Can Manage so brilliant is how this format magically weaves an emotionally coherent narrative out of 8 completely different voices. It reads like one seamless, utterly devastating story. Okay, let's jump into part 1, the catalyst, the courtroom lie. So, we open in this super tense courtroom where a 9-year-old boy named Marcus is about to testify. The text says the air tastes like old carpet and cold coffee. You can just feel the anxiety, right? Now, there's an agonizing contrast here. On one hand, you have the completely sanitized narrative, carefully constructed by his mother, Margaret. He's been told his Uncle David didn't do it, told his cousin lied, told he was asleep. But then there's the harsh, undeniable reality, because Marcus wasn't asleep. He was actually standing right there in the hallway in his dinosaur pajamas. He actually heard his cousin Emma crying from the guest room. He heard her small, broken voice. It's this tragic reality of abuse that his own mother is forcing him to cover up. And here is the exact moment it all crystallizes. The lawyer asks if he saw anything unusual. Marcus looks at his mother. Her hand is resting on his shoulder, and her fingers are literally ice cold with anxiety. And Marcus says these 4 words. "I was asleep," Marcus said. Right there. In that critical split second, Marcus chooses family loyalty over the truth. The story vividly describes how his mother's hand instantly warms up with relief, traveling through his shoulder like heat from a furnace. He cemented a lie that completely isolates his cousin Emma. The story brilliantly illustrates the relentless pacing and the fallout from this moment. We track this suffocating tension through just one single pivotal day. At 10 a.m., the lie is told. By 11:30 a.m., there's this brutal hallway confrontation where cousin Emma, realizing he completely betrayed her, tells him, "I was awake. I heard you in the hallway." By 1 p.m., Marcus and his mom are sitting in an Italian restaurant, barely touching their food, the mother's hand violently trembling. And by 6 p.m., they're back in the kitchen, already preparing for the next phase of the crisis. I mean, the emotional fallout takes root instantly.
Which brings us to part 2, the architect, a mother's manipulation.
We really need to dive deep into the architect of this entire situation, Margaret, Marcus's mother. The source material paints an absolute masterclass in the chilling duality of this character. She shows this fierce, hyperprotective love, but it's completely intertwined with cold, calculated manipulation. Later, when confronted by Marcus's father about whether the boy is all right after testifying, Margaret drops the line that gives our source material its title. She says he is exactly as all right as a boy could be after doing what he was told to do. Exactly as all right as we can manage. Just think about her pragmatic, purely survivalist philosophy there. She didn't sit down and explicitly map out a legal strategy for her 9-year-old. Instead, she used unspoken gestures, a tight smile, a long silence, just making him feel every single day exactly which choice would keep her heart from breaking. Now, I absolutely love this next phrase from the source, mothering with a knife edge. Wow. It is such a beautiful, striking literary image that perfectly captures Margaret's dangerous, super calculating love. See, she maintains her kitchen knives with a steel rod because she believes dull tools are dangerous. A sharp knife goes exactly where you intend it to. Well, Margaret operates the exact same way. She slices away the legal danger to their family, sure, but the blade cuts right through Marcus's innocence in the process. This dangerous love eventually builds into an almost clinical worldview. Margaret actually breaks down the stakes like a mathematician. There are essentially 5 categories of consequence for her. Think of it like this. If the father finds out the truth, she loses Marcus, she's left alone with her choices, and the loss becomes absolute. But if the lie holds, she retains the house and she keeps her son, even though the choices remain permanent. It's the cold mathematics of reality. She methodically lays out the stakes, viewing her family's very survival as an equation that just has to be balanced, totally regardless of the moral cost.
So, let's look at part 3, the alternative, the distant father.
Because isn't there another option for Marcus here? Let's shift gears and look at the looming presence of the father. He's scheduled to arrive the very next day, clearly hoping to play the hero. But look at the details we get. He lives in an apartment downtown with a new girlfriend. He's the kind of guy who disagrees only from a distance over the phone. He desperately wants to be the good man who swoops in and rescues Marcus from his mother's manipulation. He even offers up this grand illusion of permanence, telling Marcus about a newly painted blue bedroom waiting in his apartment. But Margaret views this sudden intervention as exactly that, an illusion. She knows he's just playing a part.
So knowing this, Margaret sets up an impossible psychological trap. She outlines 2 distinct paths for her son for when the father arrives. Path 1. Marcus can tell the real truth. The consequence? The father takes Marcus, gets to feel righteous, and Margaret is left utterly alone. But then there's path 2. Marcus can tell a slightly different lie. He can tell his father he was just scared and forced to lie by his mother. The consequence there? The father gets to feel like a good man, his anger is directed safely at Margaret, and crucially, he leaves. Margaret keeps Marcus. Guys, she is literally forcing a 9-year-old child to orchestrate both of his parents' futures.
And that brings us to part 4, the fallout, swallowing the stone.
We're at the story's heavy conclusion now, and you really have to consider the crushing agency placed on this kid. Margaret tells him, "You have the ability to decide which version of your father exists tomorrow." I mean, what a devastating amount of responsibility to shoulder. Marcus isn't just deciding his own fate. He's literally deciding which reality his father will get to live in. Will his dad be the savior who actually stays, or just the distant man who gets to feel morally superior and then leave all over again?
Which leads us to this incredibly stark realization. Throughout this entire explainer, we've watched Marcus absorb this trauma. His throat holds the physical feeling of the lie. His hands remember the exact texture of the courtroom chair. As the text puts it so perfectly, the lie was inside him now. It had a permanent address. It's no longer just some bad thing he did. It's a fundamental part of who he is now. It's his foundation story.
So, we end right where we began, circling back to that central visual metaphor of the stone. The final line from one of the relay riders leaves us with this incredibly thought-provoking, lingering idea. The stone never gets warm, but you stop noticing it's there, and that's almost the same as forgetting. It represents a childhood trauma that can never ever truly be undone. You don't fix it, you just learn to live around it. And it kind of forces us to ask ourselves, what hidden costs of family loyalty are we carrying around? What stones have we swallowed just to keep the people we love from breaking? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating Relay Rider story from RelayWriters.com with me today. I really hope this explainer gave you a deep, structured look into the incredible mechanics of this narrative. Until next time, keep learning and keep asking the hard questions.